I don't know how to handicap. I will fully admit I don't know how to handicap this game. I have no
Yeah.
idea.
They should dominate the Georgia Tech defensive front. This is supposed to be the worst linebacking core in all of the ACC.
I think this team's way much more likely to win 8 than 10. I like them to miss the playoff.
The Big Bets on Campus podcast.
All right, here we go.
What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Week 0 betting preview and season-long futures recap. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, is my BBOC fellow co-host, Colin Wilson. We are almost all the way back, less than 48 hours from the first kickoff of the 2024 college football season, naturally in Dublin, Ireland. Colin, what's going on?
We are back. I mean, we actually have real games to talk about, enough planning and futures and win totals, which we're going to get to at the end of the podcast with our favorites. But, it's going to feel real stuck when it's about noon on Saturday and whatever bet we have on Florida State, Georgia Tech is probably in the trash already. That, my friend, is the beauty of Week 0 and Week 1. Just try to survive and go 500 the next 2 weeks, and then you and I can cruise on the information that we got. That's my goal over Week 0.
Yeah, it's I don't have any bets for Week 0 or Week 1 yet because I did a personal challenge. I told myself I can't place any bets for college football until I lose exactly 30 pounds. I've lost 29.8. And I've been stuck there for the last 2 days. Now, if another day goes by, I'm going to throw that out the window. I'm obviously going to bet if it didn't happen. But that was a personal challenge of mine. So I'm very close. A couple of vacations kind of spoiled it. Eating in France for a couple of weeks didn't help. But yeah, it's been a fun summer. A lot of preparation as well. And now it's lock into the grind. Basically just being a dungeon until the college basketball national championship. So it's 8-month full-on grind. It's a labor of love. I'm excited for it. Before we get started here and dive into Week 0, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the new BBOC YouTube channel. I know a lot of you already have, but if you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. That's where you'll get early access to these episodes plus exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. We'll have interviews, we'll have live stuff. We'll even have a portion of our show this season that will be live when we record on Thursdays, and that's our 3 and out. We'll add a 4th down. We'll do like favorite bet or underdog money line, probably favorite, and then we'll talk about the Friday night games there. Might even add some additional content there where we just rapid fire talk about some other games because we're live and there's really no time limit. So that'll be exciting. So to subscribe, just go to YouTube and search BBOC or follow the link in this episode's description. All right, let's dive right in to Week 0. It's part of me just wishes like summer was extended one more week because looking at this slate, I mean, if you're going to give us a Week 0 slate, like give us a slate or just wait. And then we have another week for all the futures. And I mean, at least it's we have only 4 games. I feel like this is one of the worst Week 0 slates, right? Would you agree?
Oh, I mean, McNeese and Tarleton doesn't do it for you. North Alabama, Southeast SEMO. That doesn't do it for you, Stuck.
Yeah, I'm way behind on like FCS. I don't have FCS numbers that I feel really strong. So we'll talk about that because there's 2 FCS teams playing FBS teams, including Delaware State. Are they going to make it to Hawaii for the game? College football is the best. They missed their flight. So Georgia Tech and Florida State are going to Dublin. But Delaware State, I mean, one of the worst programs at the FCS level. They are bad. They have a longer flight. They have a longer travel. And out to Hawaii.
I have to ask you, though, because this is your area. Why is Delaware State taking a 3-hour bus to JFK when there's Philly, there's DC? Like, why is Delaware State driving all the way to JFK for a one-shot flight? It didn't make any
Probably the
sense to me.
cheapest, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not a program with a lot of money. It's been, I mean, they've only had 2 postseason appearances since the 40s. It's a bad program. We'll talk about that game later, but apparently they, over the next, this was as of yesterday, they were over the next like 36 hours, they're going to try and just get their players on a bunch of commercial flights out there. So, and then they're going to play a game that's midnight Eastern body clock wise. So like, yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, they're just going out there for the experience. I don't know how much it's going to ruin the preparation. I don't like the spread is 40. But anyway, let's start with Florida State, Georgia Tech. That is the best game on the board. It'll kick off at noon Eastern on ESPN. Florida State sitting around a 10.5 point favorite, total 55.5. Florida State favorite to win the ACC, but they did have significant roster turnover on both sides of the ball. Georgia Tech, exciting offense, questionable defense. I think that offense, that'll be the case once again this year. I'm not sure that they addressed their defensive issues. The offense, I think, has the potential to be even better under Buster Faulkner. You saw quarterback Haynes King really start to pick up that offense. They started to implement some more things as the season went on. Now you have a full off season. So I think the offense will be electric, but can they get any stops is the question. I think we probably have differing views on this game. I got too cute. Number one, I was waiting I couldn't bet any week 0 because of my own personal challenge, but it wouldn't have mattered because the one game I wanted to bet was Georgia Tech, and I wanted it to get to 14. And it didn't get there. I'm lower on Florida State than most. One of the reasons why I like Clemson to win the ACC and Clemson to get to the college football playoff, that plays a part in that. But the reason I wanted to wait till 14 is I'm semi-concerned about the matchup in that I'm not a DJU guy. This is maybe, I don't know if this is still a DJU podcast. You'll talk about that next from your perspective. But I think that the way to beat this Florida State team, and by the way, someone out there either has some intel or an influential group does not like this Florida State team because this number got beat down. It's even touched 10 at some places. And then a couple hours ago, BC got hit across a key number next week against Florida State. For what it's worth, I bring this up every year, and we'll talk about this more next week, but I've wrote about this for the last 6-7 years since we started action. Teams that are playing their first game against teams that already played, and I remove FCS because it's not that efficient of a market. So teams playing their first game against teams that already played in week 0, 60-34 against the spread since 2005, 63.8%, went 4-1 last year. And the rationale there is that you actually have tape on your opponent. So that outweighs the rust that you're able to shake off. And by the way, you don't have to worry about travel, right? You're not going to overseas. And that cuts into your prep time, and you get extra time to prepare for one opponent. So keep that in mind next week. I'll have an article, as I always do, about those specific games and my thoughts. But when it comes to this specific game, when looking to fade Florida State this year, I want teams that can stop their ground game and force DJU to throw in known passing situations. And I'm just not sure Georgia Tech has the horses to do that. This is a team that was bottom 5 nationally in standard down success rate. So like, I just have concerns that, look, Florida State's going to have a lot of talent on that defense. I know that they lost a lot of guys to the pros, but they still have a lot of talent. They're going to be able to get some stops. And is Georgia Tech just not going to be able to get any stops because they can't stop the run? And that's going to set up the play action, because I think that the way to stop this Florida State offense, because of some of DJU's deficiencies, is to stop the run on early downs. Not sure the Ramblin' Wreck can do that. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of things. You and I both had differing approaches, like where we wanted to get the team that we wanted to get, and we were trying to make a case for it. And I think both of us are kind of like, what the heck is going on in the market right now? And you're right. BC getting hit against Florida State, Georgia Tech open 13.5. I believe there was a flicker of a 14 sometime during the summer. But Once this thing got to 11 and a half, I started sending birds in the air earlier this week. Like, what is going on? It's week 0, week 1. Just be prepared, guys. There's going to be first half suspensions. There's going to be full game suspensions. But in this case, the only thing that we can find is that offensive coordinator Alex Atkins is going to serve a 3-game suspension for recruiting violations. Now, does that mean anything here? I don't think it does, because we'll go through unit by unit here. But the crux of this game is this Florida State offensive line. DJU and his 1,100 yards he has career on the ground, and Roydell Williams, 3.4 yards after contact, getting transferred in from Bama. 190 starts on this offensive line, 90% of the snaps from last year. They should dominate the Georgia Tech defensive front. This is supposed to be the worst linebacking core in all of the ACC. The defensive line isn't too far back. And what does Florida State run all the time? Alex Atkins loves outside zone. He loves counter. So the first thing you want to do is go to that Georgia Tech defense and say, well, can they defend outside zone? Can they defend counter? Well, that really comes down on your edge rushers. And when you look at this, Sylvian Yojon, 27 snaps last year. He had 300 the year before. Not even replacement level numbers. He's on the depth chart as number 1. Then Romello Height is listed as the rush edge on the depth chart for this game. Just a few hundred career snaps at Auburn and USC, nothing above replacement level production. There is nothing on the defensive end says Georgia Tech's going to be able to defend outside zone run by DJU and Roydell Williams, which I'm glad Roydell Williams is going to get a full carry load here, because he was pretty explosive when he ran for Bama. Then you look at the linebackers, the depth is a major issue. Now remember, this is a new defensive coordinator for Georgia Tech. Tyler Santucci comes in. This is the first time he's ever been a defensive coordinator. So that's another thing for Georgia Tech. He's going to implement the 4-2-5 because he's been at Texas A&M. He's been at Duke. He's a Mike Elko disciple. You're going to see that. But Mike Elko's best 4-2-5s is when they have great linebackers. We don't have that here. Trinalius Tatum had 26 tackles, a very high 17% missed tackle rate last year. It's unacceptable. Kyle Efford had 51 tackles, high tackling grade, probably the worst coverage rating on the entire team. If you look on PFF, if you like that kind of stuff. So I don't see what's stopping Florida State here. We're not asking DJU to throw down the field. I don't think most of the third downs are going to be longer than 3rd and 4. This tandem here with this offensive line should be able to absolutely plow through these defensive ends. When you go to the other side of the ball, Stuck, that's
when he does throw, like, he's going to be throwing. It's like Oregon State last year when Oregon State was able to run, right?
Yeah,
and run it well. DJU throwing with play action is perfectly capable. It's which he'll be able to do that on some early downs here. Norvell's a good play caller. It's that if you're stopping their run and then forcing him to throw, and there's our questions with that receiver for Florida State, and you're forcing him to throw when the defense knows you have to throw. That's where I have questions with Florida State this season. But I'm not sure that, like, as you said, Georgia Tech has the horses to make them do that, because the strength of this team is their offensive line, as you mentioned, their backfield, and their ground game. And Georgia Tech just doesn't have the horses to really slow that down.
I think the other thing from Oregon State for DJU is also he increased his average depth of target for his career number. He increased it by like 2 yards. And I know there's a lot of play action involved. There's a lot more deeper shots. His big time throw rate spiked last year. So could be, a product of the Oregon State offense and that great rushing attack that they had. Could be a product of Pac-12 defenses. But DJU had career numbers at Oregon State. So we'll see if that applies here. I just don't see resistance. On the other side of the ball, you can make a case. You can make a case for Georgia Tech easily. I mean, the offense is going to move the chains with quarterback Haynes King and with running back Jamal Haynes. Buster Faulkner, I don't know how he's the offensive coordinator here, soon to be a head coach, soon to be one of the best coordinators it's mentioned in households from here on out. He called a 55% rush last year, heavy zone option, some inside zone, more than, Florida State runs the outside. This will be inside zone. And he had about 120 rushing attempts called last year using counter. So a lot of the same philosophies that Florida State runs. The offensive line isn't near as strong as Florida State's. 67% return of snaps. The center and the right tackle are there. Everything else, a little bit of, names kind of filling in the holes here. The offensive line was top 25 in rushing success rate. So with Florida State and the losses they've had, you think of Jared Verse and some of the others, they have big names that are filling these holes. They have transfers from Georgia at edge. They have names. They have players. They have names. They have pedigree. Not a ton of experience here, but this Georgia Tech offensive line was top 25 in rushing success rate. And they were top 25 in first touch, like first contact, touched after the line of scrimmage. So they were moving the ball last year. And the strength of the FSU defense is the secondary. It is an elite secondary. Where I go with Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, when you get these teams that are so good at running inside zone or counter and they get free out in space, let's just say that the offensive line beats the Florida State front seven. This is a secondary that tackles great in space, absolutely tackles great in space. They're good in coverage. They're good just about everywhere. The secondary ranked as the best coverage unit nationally in on-target ball. Now, I love on-target rate because that determines if your wide receivers have a clean catch in the numbers in stride. Florida State's secondary last year was number 1 in the nation at stopping teams from throwing a clean ball to a wide receiver in stride. So you look at what Georgia Tech and what Haynes King has from a passing perspective, the ground game is the best part of their offense, not really the passing attack. So to me, Stuck, this handicap comes down to can Florida State stop the ground attack of King and Haynes? And, if they can tackle in space in the secondary, they're going to eliminate explosive plays. I think that's number 19. SP Plus makes it 19. Sagarin came out this week. They make it 14.5. I don't know if this is Alex Atkins. I don't know if there are suspensions. I don't know if there's just a lot of hate for Florida State because they're not going to be what they were last year. But when you just base it purely upon Florida State's ground game against Georgia Tech's front seven, this isn't even going to be close. So I'm taking Florida State. I got -11. I'd still hit it at 10.5 because I mean, what's Georgia Tech have in third downs, third and long? Not much. What do they have in their front seven, their defensive front with Tyler Santucci coaching his first game ever as a defensive coordinator? To me, it's just too much. I don't think it's a big thing that Alex Atkins isn't coaching this game. They're just going to run outside zone and counter, and it's going to be a ground game with DJU. I mean, that's the variable we know that is going to be there, and I'm going to bet Florida State here. -11 is what I got. I'd still take 10.
You're way, way, way higher than me, but I'm going to need probably 14 or better live. That's the number I wanted originally. So that's probably what I'm going to wait for in that one. But let's move on to the second game. And let's go. Should we go? I guess we'll finish up the FBS games. Nevada, taking on SMU in prime time. This number was way lower, then it got up to 27-ish, then it got hit back down. Nevada, a couple of groups have hit them this week and next week, so they've taken money, even though Brandon Lewis is getting the start at quarterback because Chubba Purdy is hurt, and he's not that good. I'm between 24 and 27 on this game, so it just didn't really interest me. The thought I do have on this game is just something I'm thinking about more from a general perspective is, with all of the new landscape of college football with NIL, all of the movement in rosters and, the transfer portal. And then, now some of these lower level programs have to go get, guys from FCS, D2, JUCO, there's so much more player movement makes, getting ready for the season a much more arduous task. But, part of me is starting to think, because a report came out that Preston Stone is going to start and he's healthy and good to go. He's injured at the end of last year, their star quarterback. But Kevin Jennings, who fared well in his absence, is also going to play. Like, that's the report came out. Like, you would naturally think, that would probably happen if, they were up by 30 late, as, the spread indicates that it's going to be a blowout. But I'm starting to think, like, okay, with this new NIL, are we going to see more favorites? And it might just be marginal, but bigger favorites cover a little more often because it's like, hey, Kevin Jennings is a sophomore and he goes to the coach like, hey, I want to audition, right, for where I might be going next. So instead of like running out the clock, you go out and you give kids more of a chance to like shine on TV. I don't know. I don't know if it's a nonsensical thought, but it's something I thought about this game because that report came out.
That's the Florida coach's philosophy, right? I'm going to run my tempo as fast as possible, even in the fourth quarter, up by 30. So,
your boy. What do you do? You have any thoughts here?
Yeah, I do. So the side for me was a no play from the beginning. I make it 25. There's a lot of reasons to not like SMU here, playing in elevation, monster elevation here in Reno. There's not really an overlook spot for them. They're playing Houston Christian, Houston Baptist. So there's not really an overlook here. But the one thing that I was drawn to immediately was the total. It's a total that I made at 51, and I'm not expecting, pace is not going to change for SMU at all. And when you look at Nevada, you have to talk about what is it they're going to do on offense, because Jeff Choate takes over as head coach, but he's a defensive-minded coach his entire career. They went and got Matt Lubick, the offensive coordinator. He's the offensive coordinator now, but he spent the last 2 years as an analyst at Kansas. Well, what do we know about Kansas? 30 seconds per play, slow, a lot of pre-snap motion. The reason why Kansas looks like they're a fast up-tempo team, especially on the scoreboard, is because they have huge explosive plays. That's not Nevada's offense whatsoever. They've got Sean Dollars and Pat Garwo, who practice full health this week. They've got that two-headed monster at running back. He's going to be heavily utilized with, their quarterback that's going to be starting here. And I think it's just going to be a complete ground attack from Nevada here, and that is also going to eat away at the clock. There's, plenty of other things. The secondary brings back 75% of their PBUs on defense. I'm not saying that you can stop SMU in their passing attack, but Nevada does have a pulse when it comes to PBUs and pressures that they created last year. They get corner KK Meyer, nickel Kane Savage, and safety Aiden Salul back, and they combined for double-digit PBUs last year. Again, I'm not saying you're stopping the SMU passing attack, but it's not like they're dead. They have a pulse. So, I mean, if you can stop just a couple throws, that could change the complexity of this, especially from a totals perspective. And, I get it. Nevada was bottom 10 in almost every single stat last year on defense, but there was one category where they slipped into the top 100, and that was on target ball allowed. That means they were changing up wide receivers where they caught the ball, getting them to stop and stride, getting quarterbacks to maybe switch off their progressions and go to another option. So, I don't have any love for the Nevada defense, but the best part of them is the secondary. And that's exactly where SMU is going to sink their teeth in, except for Jalen Knight running behind an offensive line that has 120 starts. That could be a problem. Preston Stone, I mean, he was unbelievable. We'll talk about him more for how much I love SMU and this team. 28 to 6 TDs to INTs last year, tripled the big time throw rate versus turnover where they play. That doesn't happen very much. But you already mentioned it. Like, when is Kevin Jennings going to come in and get his reps? Rhett Lashley does not mind subbing in Kevin Jennings. We've seen Kevin Jennings a lot before. And so you have to ask, what can they do here? Romello Brinson's coming back, Moochie Dixon at wide receiver, both over 2 yards per route run. And it's an extremely explosive offense. But you have to ask when Rhett Lashley is going to take his foot off the pedal. 2 years he's been the coach at SMU, 13 games on the road. 8 of them have gone to the under. This Nevada offense is not going to be fast. It's going to be ground-based. And I think Rhett Lashley takes his foot off the pedal at some point. This could be similar to Temple last year. SMU went on the road and beat Temple 55-0. I could see a shutout thrown on Nevada, and I could see Rhett Lashley calling the dogs off at about 48, 45 points. So I like the under here. I wrote it up in our mismatches piece earlier this week at Action Network. And really what I said was 55 is key, 59 is key. I would love to get that 59. After that piece came out, the total took a hit closer to 55. I am resigned with the fact here. I'm going to play SMU Nevada live on the under if I can get 59. If not, and I miss it, that's fine, because I've got a real feeling this thing lands 55 or 58 in the game. So if I don't get 59, I'm going to play under live.
Yeah, I don't mind that, assuming that SMU does eventually. They're not in there just with Jennings running their fast-paced offense, because it is a team last year that just – the one thing I'm concerned about with SMU is, like, can they – because last year and really the last couple of years against Power 5 teams, their offense hasn't really fared as well as it has against, teams that are at or below their level. And against those teams, they just crush them. So at 24, I could probably lean SMU, but there's definitely some uncertainty with how SMU is going to approach this from a quarterback perspective. But I don't mind your underlook there, because I can't see Lewis doing much for Nevada. And yeah, I do expect them to be slower and go ground heavy. Let's move on to the 2 FBS games. We have New Mexico, 11.5 home dog. Pretty crazy, to Montana State. If the spread holds at above double digits, it will be the largest home FBS dog against an FCS team in college football history. So it's definitely a historical line. I make this under 10. So at this price range, it'd be New Mexico or nothing. I don't have a ton of confidence in my FCS numbers at this moment. But what I can tell you about Montana State, they've been an elite, they're a top 3 FCS team in the mix for the national title this year. They have an elite rushing offense. They did lose 3 offensive linemen to the FBS level. Still have a really, really good center and tackle. Both guards are dealing with injuries, and their top back, who might not play in this game. And they have one quarterback back in Malott, but their other Chambers, he's gone. They kind of like did a dual quarterback system. The new OC, I think, wants to be more balanced and throw it more, because they were just a great rushing offense, pretty inconsistent when they threw the ball. Chambers has been injured in the past, so that is a question. Like, how much do they want to run him, keep him in if they're up against an FBS team? It's not really, I don't know. If it's on TV, I'm sure they really care about this game. The projected starting free safety from Air Force, he's likely out. The pass D was pretty vulnerable last year. The new DC. So, they do really get after the quarterback. That was the strength, but they lost 2 key defensive linemen. Still 2 very good ones up front in their 4-2-5-D. Does New Mexico have the weapons to take advantage of some of the potential weaknesses in the back end? But maybe Devin Dampier, I'm not really a fan of, but he's played, and they have some promising wide receivers. Bronco Mendenhall takes over for New Mexico. A lot of uncertainty on this roster. You think this line is too high?
Maybe by a point. I mean, I tried to make a case for New Mexico, knowing, I talked to Bronco Mendenhall in Vegas at Mountain West Media Day, and this is not even a year 0 situation. This is anybody can play any position if they show out in practice. I mean, it is a complete reset in so many spots on both sides of the ball. I don't know how you make a case for him. I tried. There's no elevation advantage here. I mean, Bozeman is 4,800 plus feet in the air. I mean, ABQ, Albuquerque's 5,300. So it's not like you can get Montana State on the elevation factor. When you look at Montana State, they ended 2023 losing in the second round of North Dakota State by 1 in overtime. If that's not motivation to come out with your hair on fire. They do return quarterback Tommy Malott, like you said, is a 24-6 career TD to INT. Shared time with Sean Chambers. Chambers is gone. I think what's interesting about Tommy Malott, he committed 2 turnover-worthy plays and 142 dropbacks last year. That's pretty impressive. The kid does not make mistakes. He added another 500 yards on the ground from designed calls. I think that's important here because the lead rusher, Julian Davis, also returns. He averaged 7 yards per carry last year. Kind of insane. And I know that they want to pass more, and they said that they want to be more balanced, but they lose their top 3 pass catchers. Jacob Trimble returns with the most targets. He had 22. So I'm not sure how much they're going to be passing here, which is kind of leading me into, I could be talked into an under. Numbers at 54.5. I'd like 55. First half numbers at 27.5. I'd like 28. So just use those as your boundaries. Now, the question is can Bronco get the Lobos to produce? I'm not sure any of us really know that, but what we do know is who the 3 best players are on defense. It's Kyler Drake at edge. It's Tyler Kean at defensive interior and Tavian Combs at nickel. That's great. But when you go
Combs potential could play the next level.
Oh, yeah. But if you go and look at their names as far as rush defensive grading per PFF, none of those players finished in the top 14 on the roster last year. So while like Tavian Combs can play coverage, he can defend the pass, he can do a lot of great things. Run defense was not a forte of their 3 best players on defense. So I'm a little nervous that they can't contain Montana State. I think the one thing that, maybe we need to do a little bit more research is Bronco Mendenhall has so many connections to Utah, to New Mexico from previous coaching stops. Does he have ties to some of the staff on Montana State that would say, hey, we're up by 14, we're up by 17. We're just going to snap the ball, turn around, hand it off, and this is going to be a low scoring game. So I am leaning under. I'm probably going to end up playing it. I don't know if it'll be first half or full game, but I just don't see a lot of explosive plays in this game, Stuck.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. There is some uncertainty with does Montana State is saying they want to be more balanced. Do they try and practice some of that more throwing, or do they hold it back? So there's uncertainty there. Jason Beck, the new OC for New Mexico, but Bronco Mendenhall's tend to be more conservative. the focus in camp for New Mexico has been all about stopping the run. Mendenhall is going to run his 3-3-5. So that is like what they want to do. There's some size. They added some size on the defensive line. A lot of uncertainty there. It wasn't good last year. And that is all they've been focused on, though, is just stopping the run, which if Montana State plays, they usually do that. Maybe that pays dividends. So yeah, 55 or better. I don't mind the under here either. All right, final game of the night, midnight Eastern. This game's not on TV. It's on pay-per-view on Spectrum. What do you got to pay? Like $70 for it, or how much is it? I don't know. You could buy. I think you could buy them like individually. I have the Spectrum Sports package in the past,
but then you have to stream it to off your phone to your TV, right? I mean, who's just watching on their? I mean, unless you're in a bar. I mean, the 1 in the morning, I'm going to be having to throw it on a TV in bed or something.
Yeah. So Hawaii, we don't know if Delaware State will be there or how many players will be there. Their star back, their star running back is out. They did get this UNLV transfer wide receiver. He's not eligible either. This team is bad. I mean,
yes,
like they're 40-point underdog here. The total's gone up. Even there's like a tropical storm that might hit Honolulu. Pretty windy city anyway, but there could be like 25-mile-an-hour winds. The Steve McBride won't play for Hawaii. Their star receiver is dealing with eligibility issues. He was also arrested, but I think those charges got dropped. You know, it's the thing that I worry about is like Hawaii. So they have UCLA next week. Maybe they don't want to show much, but then again, their offense is all about like timing and rhythm. So maybe they want to get that timing down. And if they just run the ball, like maybe that's enough. Last year, Delaware State played 2 FBS teams, Miami of Ohio and Army. Those 2 teams had 84 carries for 760 yards, over 9 yards per carry. Miami of Ohio ran for, I mean, Gabbert came out and he just threw it for like 120, and they ran it for like 480 yards. So, yeah, I mean, I think Army won like 56-0. Miami of Ohio won like 62-20. I don't know how to handicap. I will fully admit I don't know how to handicap this game. I have no idea. I have no idea when Hawaii's going to stop trying. I don't know who's going to be there for Delaware State. I don't know how high the wind's going to be yet. Delaware State is bad. If I had to bet it, I would bet Hawaii, because Delaware State is bad, and they're just Hawaii's can probably do what they want. But you know, the number that I came up with was around 40. So yeah, I got nothing here. Maybe I'll throw in like a degenerate small bet and watch it because it's week 0. But yeah, good luck if you have some conviction on this game.
I mean, I mean, it's week 0. I had extra time, so I went down a wormhole on Delaware State, and man, I wish I didn't do that. So out of 263 teams listed on Sager, and Delaware State's 258. But you know what? There is a heavy amount of returning production here for the Hornets. And, you know, I'll try to get through this.
Yeah, their freshman QB comes back.
Yeah, Marquis Adam is back. He had 104 passing attempts last year. He had double the turnover-worthy plays, the big-time throws. It's going to be bad. Wide receiver Nagy Lally is back. Tight end AJ Core. They were their top pass catchers from last year. They combined for 89 targets. Now, as I read this, as I tell you guys this stuff about Delaware State, that doesn't mean that they're any good. They're not. 4 of the 5 offensive linemen return, that led by tackle Malcolm Jeffries. He's by far the highest graded run and pass protector there on that offensive line. And then when you go to the defensive side, 11 of the top 12 tacklers return on this 3-3-5 defense. They run a ton of cover 3, trying to stop explosive plays. They never did, but they try. And they were just outside the top 100 of 122 teams in FCS. They were outside the top 100 in defensive pass efficiency, total defense, and red zone defense. What does that spell? Hawaii's just going to have a red carpet rolled out getting into the end zone here. When you go, I don't know if Delaware State is going to be able to get scores or drives on Hawaii's D. Now, Hawaii's D isn't great. They do return 80% of their pressures and tackles. 4 of their top 5 tacklers are back. The 2-4-5 defense was really actually good at creating pressures, a top 15 rate and pressure rate last year, but they struggled in every other category. I don't know if Delaware State can do something about that. They got to get past the safety, Peter Monuma. He had 3 INTs and a PBU last year. I think my point is Hawaii's really good at creating pressure, and they have a 36% blitz rate. Do they not blitz Stuck with UCLA on deck? And you know what? I'll save it to the end about Timmy Chang, because I spoke to Timmy Chang about this whole thing. When you go to the offensive side, Braden Shager is not going to have Stephen McBride, not a factor this week, will be a factor next week. But Shager really came out of his shell last year, cut his turnover worthy play rate down to 2.2%. That is low. And then when you see him in a crowded pocket, unbelievable 2.6% turnover worthy play rate and 212 dropbacks that he had pressure in the pocket. He's grown up. I mean, that Shager that we saw first come out a couple of years ago, just mistakes everywhere. He really has grown up. Now, Pavel Ashlock and Koali Nishigaya are going to be there. They had 169 combined targets last year, more than 1,100 yards and 10 TDs. They're going to be finding this run and shoot offense. They're going to be able to connect, get some scores. And so when you look, at this, I spoke with Timmy Chang. You would think this is just Hawaii running them over. This is just Hawaii scoring at will until they don't want to score. But with UCLA on deck, I was talking to Timmy Chang literally on the floor of the Circus Sportsbook. And I asked him at Media Day, I was like, you're going to go vanilla against Delaware State with UCLA on deck. Timmy's response was no words whatsoever. I said, you're going to go vanilla, right? He paused. His face went like this, and he just stared at me for 3 seconds. And then I said, that's all I need to know, Timmy. Thank you. So you're not going to get this huge, high explosive run and shoot the entire game. I don't even know if you get it in the second half. It's not like Hawaii to just turn around and hand the ball off. Sometimes they don't even have, they run in formations that don't even have running backs. So Hawaii's not going to show anything here. If they connect on passes that turn into explosive touchdowns, it's because Delaware State can't tackle. So the only play that I could make here, the only play I could make was an over in the first half, because Shager's at least got to come out, get a couple air outs, maybe 1 or 2 drives, like an NFL preseason week 3 type thing. He's got to get a couple.
Shoot. It's about timing. They got to get their timing down before you see
Exactly. So I think maximum, we probably get a half unless the game's close. I think if they get a 21-point lead, it might be time to start doing other things. But they're not going to show one single play that they're going to do against UCLA. Not that you have to with Delaware State. I'm taking the over here. Delaware State, if you go back to their quarterback, Marquis Adams, having twice as many turnover worthy plays, that can turn into pick sixes. I fully believe that ball security, pick sixes, I think this is all on the table in this game, especially with the wind. I think this game is going to be a circus. And there's going to be names that we don't even know that are on these rosters, maybe scoring touchdowns and getting playing time here. But I do like Hawaii trying their best to score for the first 2 quarters. I will take a first half over. And if Delaware State wants to contribute by actually scoring a touchdown, or if they actually want to contribute by giving up a pick 6, I'll be more than happy for it. So first half over here is the play for me.
All right. I got to cut it off there. This is enough Delaware State football talk. Hopefully they all make it to the island.
They got a whole what is it? They got the whole they got the whole tour. They got the whole Honolulu, Maui. Yeah. They got the whole thing going. Like they say that they're all fired up and it's really pulled the team together to get there. But at the same time, it's like, how do you feel like when you go to a big city and you tour everything for 12 to 14 hours a day? Are you really in the best shape to go like play a game at 2:00 in the morning? Probably.
Well, also they'd be stuck in the airport and then flying from New York
to JFK.
Yeah. Although it's not as bad as Newark. Newark's the worst airport. I was in Newark for a couple hours coming back from vacation the other day. It was brutal.
Yep.
By the way, I was looking who's worse I just pulled up Sager and see who was worse. Mercyhurst, they're new. Stetson, West Georgia, and Mississippi Valley State.
Yes.
Poor Mississippi Valley State.
Devil Dogs.
Bottom, always at the bottom. Delta Devils. Always at the bottom of college basketball power ratings, and all the way down at the bottom of the 263 teams in FBS and FCS.
Are you doing Mercyhurst on the basketball pods? I got to look this up.
Yeah, they're joining the NEC. I know. I'm so behind on college basketball. I mean, I don't know. I used to get ahead. I used to for those people that like ask about so my college basketball has like suffered over the past couple of years. So I'm trying to like get ahead of it now. because it's even harder. Like the markets get more efficient, but it's harder because there's so much more player movement, and they keep adding teams like Merciers. But I used to be a horrible college football bettor. I mean, I didn't spend any time on it. I would bet it, fire the board, and just bleed money every weekend. But I was spending my entire summer, spring, all in college basketball. Started action, said we got to do college football. We're going to do a podcast. I got to help write about it. So I was like, I got to get good at college football. I got to spend a shit ton of time on it. So then my summer has been so much more college football. I would just go into the college football season blind, not totally blind, but most of my off season, I was just digging into college basketball. So I've been trying to figure out that right mix, because college football has been good. College basketball is taking a step back. It's always give and take. Stop what you're doing right now and subscribe to the newest college sports YouTube channel.
College football is around the corner, and the new BBOC channel is your destination for betting on college sports.
Interviews with former college athletes and other topics such as college football 25.
Subscribe now and get in on the action.
We have a lot more to get to today. That's not it. We're going to go through pretty rapid fire every conference, and we'll give our favorite future. It could be win total, could be just a division, a conference future, could be playoff, could be anything. Only the rules are you can only talk about one, but if you want to mention a couple others, you feel free to list them out after. Let's start with the AAC. I'll start. I'm going to go ECU over 6. I think there's a 6 out there right now. I'm going to talk about all currently available lines, because no one cares about bets that people got months ago that you can't get anymore. So I think that so I should double check before I say that. But East Carolina, I think like last year, this is a team, they lost 3 games when they didn't allow more than 13 points. And they still, 6 is out there. Their offense it was nothing. They lost Mitchell, they lost Ehlers, they lost 4 offensive linemen, they lost 2,000-yard receivers. They had nothing. They couldn't find a quarterback. They tried Flynn, they tried Garcia. One of them's at Austin Peay. One of them's not even using their last year of eligibility. So they brought in transfer from Michigan State, who started last year, a transfer from Missouri and Miami, and Jake Garcia, who just won the job. He actually started at Miami. Good pedigree. Huge upgrade at quarterback position. The offensive line's still very questionable. Couldn't block anybody last year, but at least they have experience coming back. Add a main transfer. I'm not sure how good he's going to be, but they're going to need him to step up because one of their guards got hurt. But they did bring in more weapons. Winston Wright, who had a couple productive seasons at West Virginia. He was at Florida State. He's in. So their weapons are better. Their quarterback's better. And then their defense, which was good last year, especially against the run, and they have a lockdown corner. Some other questions in the secondary, but it's going to be good against the run. Why is that important? The bottom half of the AAC, a lot of quarterback questions. And they play Army and Navy. So the run D is going to be good. That's really important. The schedule is extremely forgiving. I mean, this is a team that they avoid Memphis, Tulane, USF, and they host UTSA from the top 4. And they face each of the bottom 5 teams in the conference, and SMU's gone, where they had to play last year. They're gone from the conference. If the offense looks good, it's going to be a new air raid principal offense, new OC. The offense looks good early. Chance they're favored in their final 7 games. And they only have, at Liberty, it's really the only game where I'm like, they're not going to win, but that's not even like an impossible game. Last year they started out in Michigan, won the national title. Schedule, easiest jump in schedule difficulty. I should say the largest jump in ease of schedule difficulty of any team in the country this year. I think they get to at least bowl eligibility, higher ceiling if the offense hits, and a higher floor because the schedule is much easier, and you have a good backup. Now you have a backup in Hauser who started. If something goes, Garcia doesn't hit or he gets hurt, ECU over, AAC, and then also Memphis to win, potential adds Tulsa under, maybe USF under. How about you, AAC?
Well, first off, I think ECU is the best dark horse, extremely long shot to make the college football playoff you could bet out of any of the G5 conferences. You summed it all up there. They have, I think, 2 games on their schedule that if they can win those, the rest of the schedule is cake. And oh boy, I'll give you 2 win totals out of the AAC that I love. I'm going to go with Rice on the over here. It's a team I was hot on at the beginning of way back in the spring. 90% of returning production on both sides of the ball. EJ Warner comes in from Temple. This is an arm that probably didn't belong at Temple, probably doesn't belong in the AAC. And this is a roster that's just loaded on both sides of the ball around him. There are numerous hedge spots in the month of November for this win total, which means you can plan it out a game or 2 ahead of whether you want to get off this or try to get your money back. It is a perfect schedule for a hedge, but I don't think you need to. I think Rice is going to be on fire, and Tulsa is going to be horrific this year. I project them at 3.7 wins. They returned 66% on offense and just 53% on defense. They were near dead last in success rate and havoc. It is not working out there for Kevin Wilson whatsoever. And 3 road games surround Oklahoma State on this schedule early. I don't know where they get 5 wins on this schedule. It's looking pretty rough here for Tulsa.
Yeah, I like Tulsa under as well. Not a Wilson guy. ACC, not a Wilson guy. Oh, maybe Mitchell should clip that. I'm not a Wilson guy. All right. Let's move on to the ACC. I have a write-up with all of my best bets. My favorite that I submitted yesterday. It'll probably be out. It'll be out by the time you're listening to this episode. And I ramble as always. It's, I don't know, 6,000-7,000 words. For ACC, I chose Clemson. It got hit today. So, but if you could find a 7.5 juiced, I would bet that, but I go into that. So I'll say out of the ones that are out there now, I played Louisville under. I played Pitt under. Clemson to make the college football playoff and Clemson to win the ACC. I'll say is my favorite. I'm lower on Florida State. I still think this team's defense is going to be dominant. I think the offense is going to take a step forward. Year 2 of the BBOC, kind of buying after the dip. I think the offensive line should be better. Good offensive line coach hire. I like the weapons, especially the freshmen on the outside. So I think, look, Clemson's falling behind, but I think the ACC, the top is down. I think Clemson has some value here to make the college football playoff and to win the ACC. But favorite, you could find a 7.5 juice with Syracuse under. Just think it's too high for this team. Play a ton of coin flips and very inexperienced staff, like first-time coordinators, first-time head coach. Yes, they're bringing in a lot of talent, but they might get out coached in adjustments and just game planning, and that might cost them a lot of coin flip games. Like they play a ton of coin flip games from a power ratings perspective. So that's my ACC. It's all about Clemson. It's a Dabo podcast. By the way, is it a DJU podcast this year?
It's not a DJU podcast. He can't throw.
Okay.
Stop.
All right. How about you, ACC?
I'll be quick because we've already talked about this team on the podcast. My favorite bet is SMU over, and I don't think it's done running. I project them at 9.7 wins. You can get an over 8.5 at plus 120 here. This is the easiest schedule in the ACC. They were really gifted just a Christmas schedule here when it comes to who they have to face in the ACC. I think they easily have room to go over 8 wins here. When you look at their returning production, they're just loaded on both sides of the ball. And this is a roster that Rhett Lashley absolutely nailed the transfer portal in 2022 and 2023. Some of the best transfer portal rankings out of those 2 years. This is the roster that's going to fit, and they're going to make noise in the ACC from day one. I love quarterback Preston Stone. We talked about running back Jalen Knighton here. A couple fresh faces from Miami and Oklahoma on the offensive line to surround Justin Osborne is going to make this an electric offense that I think is going to take this conference by storm. I got them double-digit favorites in 9 games. I got them as a TD fave against Cal. I got them as a short dog at home against Florida State. By the way, Florida State is on overlooked at Clemson in that game. Great spot for SMU. And they're going to have some problems with Louisville here, but we'll see how good Louisville is. There is enough games here to get over and even plus money juiced 8.5 in the market. I like SMU. There's not an end to how much I love them.
All right, Big Ten. I'm going to go Michigan to miss the college football playoff. This is my favorite bet. Just obviously extreme turnover on the offensive line. You lose Blake Corum. You lose J.J. McCarthy. Alex Orji, I don't think has the arm. I think he's probably going to be the starter. The passing game is just not going to be there. And are they going to be able to run like they were last year? No. And the schedule is absolutely brutal. And I think, look, the defense is going to be good. They got a great defensive line. and they have a really good lockdown corner in Will Johnson. Even though they lost eight, I mean, look, it's a team that lost 18 players. That 18 players went to the combine, 13 got drafted, 7 in the top 100. And a few others signed as undrafted free agents, by the way. So I think this offense, and you got coaching turnover. The one thing that I don't hear enough people talking about is the loss of Minter at DC. This defense obviously was super talented last year, but it was so well schooled, so well schemed, always prepared in a complex defense that confused opposing quarterbacks. Then you bring in Wink Martindale. It's kind of like a one-trick pony. You know what you're going to get. I think it's going to cost them in a couple games. I think this team's much more likely to win 8 than 10. I like them to miss the playoff. Indiana over. I played Wisconsin under, Northwestern under. And am I adding Illinois under? That's the one I have on pending. Illinois under. Am I adding Bird under?
You should. He's got nothing on this offensive roster. He's in trouble.
All right. What about you? Big Ten?
I'm going Penn State to make the playoff. Yes, there is a minus 130 out there at a couple big books. So that's, I think, the cheapest price that you can get it. This roster is absolutely loaded. Apparently, Drew Aller has learned to run Andy Kotelnicki's his formations, his shifts, his motions, all that stuff that Andy Kotelnicki likes to do pre-snap. Apparently, Drew Aller's pretty comfortable with it right now. They do have to replace their wide receivers and 3 offensive line, but everywhere else, they're pretty much loaded. We'll see if Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, the running backs, can get back to the level that they were 2 years ago. You go on the defensive side of the ball, and Abdul Carter is going to be playing in the NFL first-round draft pick, no doubt. I don't really have a lot of questions. This schedule was tailor-made for what Penn State does. 10 wins, 2 losses. I mean, and if you're 10 wins, 2 losses in the Big Ten, you're making the playoff. I don't see any resistance to Penn State finishing between 5th and 11th in the college football playoff rankings. I will take minus 130 on them to make the playoff.
I moved on to the Big 12. I do have an Iowa State ticket, Colorado under. See if you can find. I found a 6. Found a 6 at one point. See if you can wait. Just wait as long as possible. But I'm thinking about Arizona under. I'm sorry, Arizona. I still haven't pulled the trigger. Waiting on a few things there. But I'll say my favorite, West Virginia under. Look, they won 8 regular season games last year. Remember, before the season, they were picked to finish last. I know you were high on them. And they definitely exceeded expectations. But they blocked 2 field goals in the final 5 minutes to beat TCU by 3. They had a goal line stand in the final minute against Texas Tech when Baron Morton played with one arm. And then they had a last-minute touchdown drive, 80-yard drive in the final minute to beat Baylor. They even got extreme turnover luck against UCF and Pitt. Those games were double-digit, but the yardage was even. So, yeah, they lost on a Hail Mary to Houston, but they had a crazy, basically, Hail Mary to take the lead before then. They definitely got pretty fortunate. The defense did improve after they made a schematic shift late in the year, but they lose a lot from that defense. Close to, I think they're outside the top 90 in returning production. The offense does return a lot. Great ground game. Almost ran for 3,000 yards. Led all Power 5 teams. Garrett Green's back, quarterback. Their backfield's back. Good weapons on the outside. But they lose their 2 most important offensive linemen. Zach Frazier is probably going to start for the Steelers. And then Doug Nestor, who was signed as an undrafted free agent. So the offensive line is still going to be a strength. Still going to be a really good offensive line. It's still going to be a really good rush attack. But it might take a slight step back, especially after losing Frazier, who was superb. So offense might just take a slight step back. I still have questions about Green's accuracy downfield. And the defense is still problematic to me, especially after losing all the talent. You know, bringing a lot of transfers, especially in the secondary. Maybe they hit. But it's a gauntlet of a schedule. Even though Oklahoma and Texas are going out of the Big 12, they have one of the 10 hardest schedules in the country. Only a home game against Albany in week 2 is the game where I'm like, they're definitely going to win that game. I know you say the game at Pitt too, but they got Penn State and at Pitt. They face 6 of the top 7 in the Big 12. The only one of the bottom 4 is Cincy, and that's on the road. Schedule's brutal. I'll make them prove they can get to 8 wins. Give me the under there. How about you, Big 12?
And if Cincy gets Dante Corleone back, that's problems for Garrett Green and the running backs behind him. And I'll just say this about West Virginia. I got cold on them because of the number of transfers in their back 7 on defense. Like, there's just not a big enough resume for some of the transfers that came in to fill the gaps here on defense. I love you, West Virginia, but we're stepping off the train a little bit. Iowa State's going to make the Big 12 championship game, but this team is the team that I think that is going to win the Big 12. I'm going with UCF, baby. Give me Gus Malzahn. Give me the Wildcat. I'm going to call all the Woo Pig Suey, except it's wearing the Knights colors here. KJ Jefferson is in at quarterback. I'm not sure these Big 12 defensive lines are ready for the size that KJ Jefferson is. Oh, by the way, they get the best running back that's been in the MAC in several years in Penny Boone to join RJ Harvey to run this Wildcat Gus Malzahn offense that is going to confuse and embarrass a few defensive lines and a few defensive linebackers. So I love UCF. The schedule is tough, but we'll see what KJ is going to be able to do now that he has some wide receivers capable of catching the ball. Everything from camp down there is great from the perspective of KJ getting along with the locker room, being a leader, being a voice to everybody in the huddle. It's like a KJ that I haven't seen since 2021. And when Gus Malzahn says out loud, he doesn't say this lightly. He's the closest I've ever had to Cam Newton, since I coached Cam. I think everybody should just, kind of pause and say, what happens when Gus Malzahn gets his prototype quarterback in this offense? It's going to be trouble for a lot of other people. The schedule is tough. Hopefully they have their championship game spot wrapped up by the time Utah comes into the bounce house at the end of the season. But I think there's places you're going to hammer these guys. Like when Colorado comes to the bounce house, hammer. Utah, if they're doing load management and they don't need the game, you never know what's going to happen. UCF 9-1, I think, is out there. I think we've hit this thing for so many months here. It's down to 9-1, but that still like that number.
Conference USA. I'm going to throw out Kennesaw State under 2.5. This team isn't ready for this level. They went 0-6 last year against FBS and FCS teams. And I know they redshirted a couple people, but I don't think this roster is ready. Specifically at quarterback. Their quarterback depth chart is Davis Bryson. He started one game last year against Lincoln, California. He went 0-6 in that game. Lincoln, California, they're the Oaklanders, by the way. They're an unaffiliated traveling team. They finished 0-12 in their independent, unaffiliated team. The other quarterback, the next quarterback on the depth chart is the coach's son. There's no college stats. I don't even think he started in high school or this team is bad. And they should go back to the triple option. They want to run this pistol option. I don't think they're ready. Half of their final 8 opponents are coming off a bye, which isn't ideal, especially for a team that lacks depth. And they got to go through this FBS schedule for the first time. And most of their easiest games are at the end of the year. They might be just beat up, and who knows who's that quarterback at that point. And if they're in some close games with some of the shitty teams in Conference USA, they can't kick. So that could cost them games too. Under 2.5. I also have New Mexico State under. Maybe I'll add Sam Houston over. I like Jacksonville State under. I know you have that. I missed the number.
Yeah.
Might still play it. But how about you?
Well, taking the low-hanging fruit and going dirty on the Owls there, but I can't believe, they're not ready. Everything I've read, they're not ready for this. I'm going to go long shot here. You already mentioned the team. I'm going to go Sam Houston State 25-1 to win the conference. Can they beat Liberty? The answer is absolutely not. Can they make the championship game? The answer is absolutely yes. And I think that's what you have to do with your strategy in Conference USA. A lot of people had New Mexico State futures going into Liberty last year, and the number just wasn't big enough from a futures perspective to get a hedge in. You're going to have a 20-1 when you walk into that championship game with Liberty, because you're going to be staring at potentially like a -800, -1,000 money line here. So get yourself a big enough number here and just be prepared to take it at the end. But I like Sam Houston State. When you look at this, last year they had no offensive identity. There was just way too many injuries. The trick they tried to pull from the FCS to FBS didn't really pay off by sitting guys out 2 years ago. A lot of those guys are healthy now. They have Jace Bauer coming in from Central Michigan. He's going to be taking over a quarterback. That's not a bad thing. That's a decent quarterback, especially for this team. Nolan Smith at wide receiver returns, 2.1 yards per route run. That is a quality wide receiver for Sam Houston here. Easiest road schedule in all of Conference USA. We're going to UTEP. We're going to Florida International. We're going to Kennesaw State. And we're going to Jacksonville State on November 23rd. But this is the easiest Conference USA schedule by far.
Eat 'em up, Cats. It's good to see you on the bandwagon. A little disrespect for FIU. Nobody goes into Pitbull Stadium and comes out with an easy win. Now their stadium is now named Pitbull after the rapper Pitbull. All right. The MAC,
Oof.
Sorry, y'all. You're gonna have to wait for the Mac manifesto, which will be out probably like Monday next week. Waiting on like final depth charts. They like actually matter to me. You have to wait for my future. But favorite Ohio under. This team got is hit harder than any team in the country with the new college football landscape. Roster's been decimated. I can't see them getting the 7 wins. You?
I took Bowling Green 8-1 to win the conference. Combination of returning production on both sides of the ball, scheduling. I make them the second best team in the conference. 82% returns on the offensive side. They weren't bad at moving the ball whatsoever. They were terrible at ball protection. They finished 125th offensively and havoc allowed. They've got to retrieve that number, get it back to normal. You never want to take any team at the top inside the MAC. I haven't gone through the rough drafts and looked at your MAC manifesto. I don't know which way you're leaning. I am a big fan of Bowling Green here to pull it off and actually cash at 8-1, which I think is 7-1 out there. I'd still buy that too.
Moving on to the Mountain West. The only thing I have here, I have some Boise to win. Man, it's been getting hit. Like -120 maybe, which is out there. But I probably can't recommend that in good faith. Maddox Metson's going to start instead of Malachi Nelson. I think that their ceiling is a little lower. He was a 5-star kid. Apparently he wasn't good enough to win the job. But I really like this team. I love the coaching. This team rallied for Danielson. But it's getting a little too expensive now. Might add Hawaii over. But I don't have much in the Mountain West. What do you got?
You see that the total came out on Texas A&M Commerce and San Diego State came out 54.5. You know what we're doing, right? You know what we're doing with that.
Oh boy.
All right, we'll talk about that next week. I think, from a Mountain West perspective, there was a lot of ways to go after getting to know these teams. I like Hawaii to overachieve with what they have. I think San Jose State with the scheme that they're going to run on offense, not going to work. I like them to underachieve. And I think the team that I love here the most is UNLV. UNLV was 6-1, 5-1 out there. Got a chance to speak to Barry Odom out in Las Vegas. The fact that Haj Malik Daniels is here, this is the Campbell quarterback that you've been with Action Network and following us forever. We bet on Campbell the first 4 games of the 2021 season because of Haj Malik. So, he is an unbelievable quarterback. They bring in another FCS quarterback, I believe, from Holy Cross. They are absolutely fine without Jaden Mava there. Ricky White is probably the best wide receiver. I mean, he's making a lot of All-American teams, and he's a G5 wide receiver here. The go-go offense is still in place with Brendan Marion there. Like the schedule, I think UNLV, they made the championship game last year. I don't see a huge drop-off here with the loss at quarterback and what they've gained through the portal, considering how well we know their 2 quarterbacks. So I like UNLV to win the conference. I did like Wyoming. So for those of you who listen to the Mountain West podcast, Harrison Whaley is injured. I don't know the length, but that really threw me off Wyoming because Evan Svoboda, their new quarterback, is going to run a lot of Josh Allen stuff. He's going to take off himself. He's the same size. He's wearing the same number. But he did lose his zone read option partner in Harrison Whaley. So kind of cooled on Wyoming there if you're still looking to place bets. But UNLV to win the conference.
By the way, Texas A&M Commerce. Why did like
Just play
they didn't win a game last year, I don't think. But then I looked, I was like, why does it show that they have a win? So I thought that they didn't win a game. And
1-9 is what I see.
Yeah, but I forgot that Northwestern State had a forfeit. Well, they won 2 games, but Northwestern State had a forfeit because of a tragedy that happened. But you're on to San Diego State overs, and their D is gonna be bad, and they bring in the flash fast. But now you're gonna be on a Texas, so now you might be on the right track. But you're on a Texas A&M Commerce over. Last year against Old Dominion, they scored 9 points. They scored 6 against Sacramento State, 10 against UC Davis, 11 against Incarnate Word, 7 against Nicholls State, 13 against Houston Christian. I mean, 14 against CLA.
Yeah, well, they're getting 20 possessions in this game because Sean Lewis is going to run. It's going to be a 3-and-out, 3-and-out, 3-and-out. I mean, there's going to be 20 possessions per team in this game. It's going to be fabulous.
Speaking of Texas A&M Commerce, I just told you about that. They won 1 game last year, and they should have beat Old Dominion. Sun Belt, Old Dominion, under. Still like it where it is. This team could go 0-12. I mean, look, their schedule is brutal for an FCS team. They could start 0-4. They start at Bowling Green, East Carolina, who's significantly improved. Talked about that earlier. South Carolina, Virginia Tech, and then you have 2 games on the road to start league play. Both those teams are coming off of a bye, and it's your second and third straight road game. Hell, and then by the way, you still have Texas State, App State, JMU, Ark State, and Georgia and Southern to go. This team lost so much talent, like one of their best linebackers to Michigan State, their slot to Memphis, their strong safety to Indiana, their free safety to Indiana, their corner to TCU, their other corner graduated. These are going to Power 4 programs. And it wasn't like this defense was great last year. Yes, Jason Anderson's a stud at middle linebacker, but he's coming off of an injury. But the guys they brought in to replace some of this talent that they lost, it's just not there. And by the way, the offensive line stinks. The secondary lost a lot. They can't get any pressure. That spells disaster. The offensive line gave the most sacks in college football this year. They had one good pass protector. Well, he transferred out in the spring to Washington, then Memphis. So there goes that. And, lose a couple other receivers to power programs. And last year, this team was a pure luck box. They beat Louisiana by 7 on a goal line stand. They beat Texas A&M Commerce by 1 at home because they didn't convert a 2-point conversion in the final play of the game. They beat Southern Miss by 4 and another goal line stand in the final minute. They beat App State by 7. They trailed by 1 in the final minute, and they scored a touchdown in the final minute after converting a 4th and 10. They beat Georgia Southern by 3 on a field goal in the final second. They beat Georgia State by 1. They trailed by 10 with 5 minutes to go, got a blocked field goal, a safety, and then a touchdown on the final play of the game on 4th down. Those are 6 wins, all by 1 possession. Yes, they lost 4 games by 1 possession, but if you look, James Madison and Marshall were up double digits in the second half, and they did blow leads against Coastal and Wake, but they're outgained by 100 in those games. Team was so lucky last year. I don't want to hear it, Ionella. Under on ODU. What do you got in the belt? Oh, by the way, Troy under and JMU. And I might sprinkle just for fun Ark State to win the belt. What do you got?
I love Ark State to win the belt. You and I didn't get to do that podcast together. I love Arkansas State. Like I actually was, 14-1 is that out there? I mean, this is officially put it on the board here. I've got nothing but love for the top of the conference here. I got 3 overs: Louisiana, Texas State, and App State. I think all of their numbers are deserving going up there. At least I think a half win shy of where they are in the market right now. All of them have really high returning production rates per tarp. And, the win totals are still good to go. You look at some of these schedules, like Louisiana, they should start the season 3-0 easily. Then they're going to be TD favorites in conference against Southern Miss, Coastal, South Bama, and ULM. That gets them to 7 wins. And then all you got to do is figure out a couple of the other games, which should be no problem for these guys. Texas State, Sun Belt Player of the Year, Jordan McLeod is going to be there. The quarterback depth chart goes 3 deep. They're going to start the season off 3-0. They're going to steamroll this November schedule, which is completely cake. I like the over on the heavies in the Sun Belt, the App States, Louisiana, and Texas State.
I disagree with you on Texas State. Everyone loves them. I'm not there. Go listen to the Sun Belt preview pod if you want to hear us argue. We argue incessantly, me and Calabrese about Texas State. He kind of gets ganged up on by me and Ionella. But then we gang up on Ionella about ODU. Final. Save the best for last because it just means more. The SEC. Gig 'em. A&M to make the college football playoff. I love this. That's my favorite bet. I'm lower on Ole Miss and Missouri than the market. Like the SEC last year would have got 5 teams in the college football playoff, if you include Texas, who moved. I think they're more likely to get 3 or 4 than 5, but it's possible. Just never doubt the SEC's pull. So let's assume Georgia and Texas get there. A couple other spots. I'm not a believer in LSU in that defense. Not a believer in Tennessee yet. Oklahoma's schedule is too difficult. Like I said, I'm lower on Ole Miss, lower than Missouri. Who's left? So I think opens the door for Texas A&M, who I love in week 1. Been saying that all summer. They've taken money now. But if they win that game, that's a resume builder. Like that's a huge game. The first and last game of the season are huge when they host Texas and they host Notre Dame. And that's a theme. They only have 3 SEC home games, but they're all against the hardest teams on their schedule. And they also avoid Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Pretty manageable road schedule in the SEC. Like it's not going to be easy because you're not playing Vandy. But Florida, Miss State, South Carolina, and Auburn. Neutral site against Arkansas. Can't ask for better than that. And like I said, they host Missouri, LSU, Texas, Notre Dame. They all got to come to the home of the 12th man. But the reason I really do like this, because there's some uncertainty. There's new pieces on the roster and the staff. But so maybe it all falls apart. I'm really curious to see how the offensive line works out. Still think the D is going to be good. Even though they lost a lot on the defensive line, they still have guys who are going to play on Sunday there. But the biggest reason I really like this team, but I like the upside of it. I don't want to bet they're over win total. So if it goes right, there's a lot of upside here. Oh, Elko coming in. I'm a huge fan, and it'll just be a serious team. Like under Jimbo Fisher, they were not. They always had talent, and just at least they're not going to run Jimbo's old offense, that like being super conservative. They're going to be a modern, serious team. Love Elko. Big coaching upgrade, and maybe the quarterback can finally stay healthy. They never stay healthy at Texas A&M.
I'm setting the over under. I'm setting the over under on Weigman at 9.5 game appearances. 9.5. What do you got? You going over? You going under? Obviously, you got to go over.
Over. They're due. Due factor, baby. Aggies. I also played South Carolina over, and I might add LSU under. But what do you got in the SEC? Arkansas over?
Listen, I love Arkansas. I've already made a bet that if they don't make a bowl, I'll wear my neck brace, Bobby Petrino style. Won't matter. He'll be fired too if they don't make a bowl. I will say this. I'm not being a homer. It has been an exceptionally good camp. There are a lot of good vibes coming off this roster that has not been there the last 2 years.
Vibe reports is what
I got vibe reports, man. They love each other.
Vibeology.
Hey, listen, there were too many deep-seated pockets on that roster last year. It got nasty. All right, so let's play into more Texas A&M love by saying I'm taking Texas on the under, but I am not taking that 10.5. I'm not taking that 10. Give me the alternate team total under 9.5 on the Longhorns. Yes, that includes a final season game against Texas A&M. I'm going to need the Aggies pretty bad to win that game. I think the best version you get of Texas A&M is the final game of the season when they're all in their new systems or new schemes. They've got it down. I think Texas A&M will be a well-oiled machine there by the end of the year. But there's other spots on this schedule I am just not a fan of whatsoever. They're hosting a very talented UTSA team the week after playing Michigan. Oh, by the way, what's Michigan going to do? Line up, run between the tackles, right at two defensive interior players that are not named Murphy or Sweat. That's a problem for Texas right there. Then you look at Red River. My love for Oklahoma has been there all summer. I believe I haven't even heard from Stuckey on this podcast that Danny Stutzman's going to win the Heisman.
How did you not mention Danny Stutzman as your favorite bet for Big 12? We went through the Big 12 portion. You didn't mention Stutzman one time.
Yeah, because somehow I didn't do it. But I mean,
but you brought him up.
Yeah, Oklahoma's live in that game. But when you get past that, go look at the history of the Longhorns after Red River. It's been an abomination. Losses to almost everybody. Almost lost to Houston one time. I mean, it's been horrible that this Texas program has not been able to pick themselves up off the mat. Even if they win Red River, they're terrible the following week. That's how big of a game this is. Who do they play the week after that? Georgia. Huge problem, right? I don't know if you're going to beat Oklahoma. You get Georgia the following week. You get Texas A&M at the end of the year. Michigan's got the goods because all they're going to do is run the ball between the tackles, and you can't defend that. And oh, by the way, hey, Sark, what's going on? You were 4th in red zone TD percentage, and last year you finished 120th. And he says, you lose Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. I can't run the Wildcat. The Rocat is what they called it down there. Do you have any options this year to run something like that? We haven't identified them yet. Well, since I talked to Sark in Dallas at SEC Media Days, they've lost CJ Baxter. They've lost another running back. Like, I am not comfortable with this team and where it's going whatsoever. I'm not saying they fall off the map. Under 9.5, I feel comfortable enough saying that I think Texas is probably going to land as a 9-win team this year.
Checked all the boxes in the final segment. We got a SEC Media Day, a Sark mention, a Danny Stutzman mention, and the vibes of Arkansas are high. I feel like that's a good place to stop. By the way, we will have a live show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Saturday, ahead of week 0. Talk a little bit more about those games, talk about our one favorite future, and we will reveal our brackets, our college football playoff brackets. So make sure you tune in there. If you're watching on YouTube, again, hit that subscribe button. Really helps us out. Thanks to Colin for joining me. Thanks to our producer in the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you. It is good to be back. Can't wait to sweat with all of you all season. Voicemails, they will be back. 959 Bad Beat. Call in. We won't have a recap show for week 0, but we will for week 1. If there's any good ones, we'll play them, put them on socials. So get used to calling. Save the number. It's always in my Twitter handle as well. It's good to be back. Subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Leave a review, 5-star review. Do that right now. Really helps us out. Subscribe on YouTube, 5-star review. I'll do a bunch of giveaways and yeah, it's just good. I'm already hyped. I can't wait for the games to start. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you Saturday morning for the live show. Good luck on week 0 and the entire season. Cheers.
He's out.